Shot me.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the February 25th Board of County Commissioners meeting. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, again, good morning, everybody, and the first thing we have on our agenda are our minutes. Gentlemen, do we have any additions or corrections?
I move to approve the proceedings of the Board of County Commissioners for Montezuma County held Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the proceedings of the Board of Commissioners, Montezuma County, for February 18th, 2025. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next up is planning. Looks like we have a couple of signatures today on Mylars for Three Rotors Ranches and for Chris Robertson and Joanie Allencastre.
That's correct.
All right, we'll roll them
We'll
out.
get them out. Dadgummit. Oh, man. I don't know what it is, but usually the thing goes out when I touch stuff. There's a lot of static up here today. Look, the papers won't. It's just my electric personality.
The only other item we have sent public notice to the newspaper. Will be in tomorrow's paper. Public notice for changing or adding a section to the land use code. That's scheduled for April 1st. It would be looking at adding the variance and after the fact variance section to our land use code. And once we have final review and the final draft, then we can put that on our webpage as to the wording, what it is, so everybody can read it, review it. And that gives us our 30-day minimum public notice for the April 1st public hearing at 9 a.m.
Okay. Very good. Anything else?
That's all I got, unless you have questions.
Not at this time, Commissioners. Anything?
No, I don't.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you all. All right. Well, I am going to assume we have some public comment today. So the Board of Montezuma County Commissioners welcomes you to this meeting. Person speaking during public comment will be limited to 3 minutes, or depending on the number of people wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all the members of the public the opportunity to address the board. When addressing the board, please state your name and address for the record prior to providing your comments. And comments to individual supervisors or staff are not permitted, and participants may not yield their time to other. And I will stop you. I didn't last week, but please do not take anything to staff or department heads. So with that, the public comment session is open.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Diana, Travis. So yesterday we had, my name is Alan Mays, 21693 County Road 21 in Lewis. Yesterday we had coffee with the county. It is a good thing to continue to have, and so I'm pleased with that. Good discussion. People that don't generally come to things, learn some things as they ask questions or hear from other people, so that was good. One of the things that came up was the budget, of course, for the county, and how short some of those things are and what has to happen. It was asked, so if we had to, because we don't have a sales tax, what would we cut in services? What would the county cut in services to the citizens of Montezuma County? And I think one of the things, there are budget items that do need to be looked at. I'm a little bit mystified of 4 people going to D.C. next week, but that's just my opinion. And I think that might be, I don't know if those meetings can be Zoomed, but if they can, I think that would help save some travel costs. This last week, so that's that on the budget. This last week we had a group come in to talk to us about gun control bills that are being put forth by our state legislature. There were as many as 13 on a list. I don't know how many more are going to be brought forward, but things are such that people do need to be aware of what's going on and what they can do to help some of these things. We're in rural Colorado. We have the right to bear arms for our own protection, and that is a constitutional right. The bills that are being put forward are trying to take away our constitutional rights, and when they get passed, they are not constitutional, and so those are not laws. But anyway, that's my opinion again. And again, we did have a good group show up. Anytime there's an opportunity for the public to come forward and talk here to the commissioners or to other groups, I think people should take advantage of it. Be as aware as you can. It's interesting today. We have quite the group here today, and that's good to see too, because maybe spring is coming. People are coming out of their winter hovels and coming to talk to you guys. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Busick. I live at 14745 Road 26. I also attended the coffee with the commissioners yesterday, which I would highly recommend more people attend. It's nice to be able to have an exchange with the commissioners. That said, they've already heard some of the defunding I'm going to mention today, but I want the public to be aware of how this slash in federal dollars is impacting Southwest Colorado. Tri-State, our energy provider, qualified for $679 million in federal funding. That would save $430 million in rural consumer benefits over the next 10 years. The Southwest Water Conservation District also qualified for $26 million of federal funds, which is now hanging in the balance. That money would advance projects that will help address the drought crisis in southwest Colorado. Mancos Conservation District was told their agreement was terminated for $630,000 in federal funding. The Montezuma Orchard Restoration Project qualified for $85,000 in a specialty crop block grant program, and that money is also uncertain. Our local senior services has mentioned that they are short $16,000 right now in federal funding that they're hoping to receive. That doesn't seem like a lot in comparison to the other dollars, unless it's your lunch or your public transportation. That said, as elected officials, going to Washington next week, you do have access to levers and power that your constituents do not. There was a sentiment yesterday that the commissioners were going to wait and see where the pieces fell, that they too felt like they were screaming into the wind. To that I say, that is what you were elected and are being paid to do. Maybe you will even see Congressman Hurd next week, whose representative was a no-show in Montezuma County yesterday. Hundreds of engaged constituents left with no one to listen to them. Maybe, just maybe, he would show up to listen to the three of you. Thank you for your time and for showing up to listen to everyone today.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is M.B. McAfee. I am at 22277 Road 20, which I think is getting that gooey stuff put on it today. They're doing something out there. I personally think our county roads out where I am are fine. Alan might disagree. I don't know. What I would like to say to the three of you, and I'd like you to look at me, frankly, actually, because I'm talking to you. I make phone calls every day to folks in D.C., and I call their state Colorado numbers and their D.C. numbers. And as Rebecca said, that feels like screaming in the wind. And I don't know what your trip up to D.C. is about next week, but you do have a little bit bigger voice than I do. And I want you to use it for the good of the constituency that you represent, which is collectively Montezuma County. I'm not sure what commissioners can do about all the craziness that's happening in D.C., but what I do think you can do is you could talk to Representative Hurd and ask him, why didn't Naomi Dodd show up yesterday? I think she didn't show up because she felt it would be a hostile crowd. But the fact of the matter is, there were people there yesterday who had to do awful things. There was a man there that I think works for the Forest Service who got a note yesterday, or a letter, a directive, that he was to make a list of his employees and prioritize for firing. Now, I think that's really an awful thing to ask somebody to do. So I'm not sure what you can do about that particular problem, but surely you can tell Representative Hurd that Montezuma County has a voice and we would like him to listen. So thank you for doing the job you're doing. Please always speak up for your constituents on all levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Roy Brown. I live in Mancos. My address is 42448 Highway 160. I too am really concerned about the cuts. Anytime you start cutting people's jobs, I think there's something wrong with that. I have something personal to say about cuts and interfering with my livelihood that I'll come back to. But before I do that, I'd like to register my complaint about cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicare. All of us old people, every single one of us rely on those kind of services from the federal government. And I'm hoping when you guys meet with HERD that you register that complaint for us. Back when I was a kid, coming out of high school, I did my patriotic job, not because I wanted to. I didn't want to. Nobody does. I was afraid. I thought I wouldn't come back. But I served, and I served proudly. I did that because I was promised some things by the United States government. I was promised that when I reached an old age that they would take care of me. If I didn't have the funds, they would allow me to live. If I had to have my knees replaced, they'd replace them, those kinds of things. And now, this was a campaign promise by the man in charge, and now he's breaking it, or trying to as hard as he can. Now I'd like to come back to that old costing money. And this is a problem that I have locally. And I don't know if your policy still is that you don't allow food trucks at the farmer's market. I don't know that. I know that it was that way when I had my food truck there. But I'm telling you, I grew the meat that I served out of that food truck. I grew it in Montezuma County. I grew the veggies in Montezuma County. And then I was just trying to make a few bucks on a Saturday selling my product at the farmer's market. And I was kicked out of the lot. I was moved out on the street. You say, oh, well, what does that do for me? When you're kicked out on the street, now you're having to compete with the people that are going to Slavens or wherever. They're parking on that street also. I had to get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, so I would wind up getting the three spaces that it took for me to park my food truck. I don't think that's right. I don't know if that's still your policy, but I know that it was then. And there was one person responsible for that, the people at the farmer's market was complaining about. I hope he thinks about what he did, because I think that's wrong. I thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mary Dodd, and I live at 1324 Melrose Street in Cortez, and I've lived there for over 15 years, and I also own property out in the county that I've owned for 25 years. As the administrators of this county, you have the responsibility over our economic well-being. Certainly, we make our contributions by working and saving money to retire. That well-being is being severely threatened by the actions of the current D.C. administration with illegal cuts to Medicaid and the Veterans Administration dollars in particular, among other things. Aside from the great harm physically and emotionally these cuts will do to Medicaid recipients, to veterans, and their living dependents, they will crater our economy. It's not news to you that our economy receives over $6 million a month in Medicaid dollars. We receive over $700,000 a month in food stamp benefits, SNAP benefits. And we receive $30 million in this county alone in veterans benefits, and most of those are spent on health care. Our hospital is the second largest employer in the county, and its success is critical to the success and viability of our county. Without a good hospital and healthcare system, we can't attract new businesses, we can't attract younger families, we can't attract seniors, and we certainly can't attract teachers, and we certainly can't retain seniors. About 21 months ago, many of us came before you to plead on behalf of our hospital and our family birthing center as it was threatened to be closed. You, the commissioners, and the residents of this county answered the call and worked to stabilize that situation and ensure the success of our hospital and healthcare system. You might say that you have no power, that you can't do anything because these are federal cuts. I'm here to tell you that you most certainly can do something. You can do what many of us in this room are spending our free time doing every day, making phone calls on behalf of the things that we care about that this administration is cutting and destroying. And when you go to Washington next week, and even when you're here at home, I hope that you will follow the advice of everybody who has already spoken and make calls to Representative Hurd to tell him what these cuts will do to our county. We may not have a county that's worth living in if these cuts go through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Morning, my name is Corelia Varek. I live at 13449 Road 29 in Dolores. I am a fourth-generation Montezuma County resident and come from a long line of hardworking farmers, ranchers, educators, agitators, and military veterans. I am speaking this morning to voice my concern over 3 areas in this county as we continue to see a massive upheaval of our federal funding system and government. Number 1, to speak to Mary Dodd's point, continued livability of this county. Without funds for our schools, hospitals, and vulnerable community members, Montezuma County will likely see a loss of residents and new residents coming in, as well as educated and employable individuals, and an increased number and burden on our local systems without federal assistance. Number 2, continued viability of agriculture in this community. Many ag producers and agricultural conservation organizations receive federal grants for on-farm improvements and subsidies for crop loss and damage. Multi-generational farms, families, and important nonprofits are at risk today. Number 3, the continued enjoyment of our public lands by the people. Without adequate staffing and attention, our lands will fall into lawlessness and disrepair. We must remember and recognize the revenue that our beautiful lands bring us in tourist economy. This land is ours, not Elon Musk or any other billionaire corporations. I urge you, commissioners, to please stand up for our county and the residents you represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Jennifer Magnuson. I live in Mancos at 7587 Road 40.3. And I am the president of the Mancos Valley Chamber of Commerce. I'm also involved in the Mancos Trails Group and the Chicken Creek Coalition, a newly formed body that is helping to protect Chicken Creek area from the illegal land grab that we've been dealing with there since the fall. In particular, you've heard numbers from all of these folks earlier about the amount of federal funding that comes into our county and what it does for all of the services here, the agricultural economy, the business economy, the tourist economy, the public lands, the hospital, making this county livable. As president of the chamber, we've been hearing from our members a lot of panic about disruption to the tourism economy, disruption to agriculture, and the services that come from the federal government there. We are begging you to use your voices, which are, like other people have said, a little bit louder, a little bit bigger than ours, to let people at the higher levels of government know how much this is going to hurt our county. And it's not just going to hurt the people who are directly receiving these funds, it's going to hurt everyone. When there are not businesses, when there's not food, when there's not money coming in from tourists coming here because our parks, our public lands are closed, permits aren't being issued, those businesses are not going to be able to spend money at other businesses. It's a whole thing that could collapse, and we need your help with it. We also need you guys to make some kind of a contingency plan for wildfires, because they are firing wildland firefighters with the U.S. Forest Service. That's what that list that was mentioned earlier was about, prioritizing wildland firefighters for termination after this dry winter. And we know what that does. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. All right. Seeing no further public comment, we'll close the public comment session of this meeting, and we are going to go straight on to social services. Come on down, Miss Kelly.
morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Okay. I would so move we approve the minutes of the regular session of the Board of Social Services for January 28th, 2025, and also accept the financials for the amount of $1,611,099.41.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the record of proceedings for Tuesday, January 28, 2025 for social services, and along with the payables for the month of January 2025 in the amount of $1,611,099.41. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, what else do you have?
I did want to provide you an update on the child care CCAP program. As discussed at our last BOCC meeting, Stephen and I have participated in one of the discussions with other attorneys across the state and other county directors of social services. They've had general discussions, but I will say yesterday the JBC put on the long bill recommendations $15 million to be added to CCAP. The projections right now are 17 to 24 million overspending across the state. That's not Montezuma County specific. And so at this point, that group's really gonna hang tight and wait and see what the long bill has within it. And they're very happy that the state is putting that extra 15 million to ensure that that budget shortfall doesn't continue to impact some of those counties that have freezes and wait lists happening. We continue to monitor our spending. Our projections still show that we will be fine with that allocation this fiscal year, so we'll continue to monitor that. We did have a Juvenile Services Planning Committee meeting this last month, since I last saw you. Wanted to provide you an update. We did work with our local probation office to rewrite our crossover youth plan. That's a plan where juvenile justice involved youth also have child welfare involvement. That plan we really streamlined and talk about who's doing what when those families are involved with both of those systems. That will be taken to the state this month for formal approval. But it's better. It really outlines our roles and responsibilities for each agency. So that was nice. I don't really have anything else above and beyond requesting that I move MoCo and senior services updates to this already allocated time for the department and do that quarterly and just add it to the agenda and make sure that you are all okay with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. On the bills that we voted on Thursday and Friday, did you have any questions, comments, concerns over any of that?
No, I am not in favor of any of them at this point. So.
Okay.
What I will say is to all the administrative things coming down the pike, we really don't have a lot of news from CDHS on what the impacts of new mandates will be. Across the county, across the state, we just continue to wait for those guidance from CDHS and HCPF.
Okay. All right. Questions, Commissioner?
No.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it. All right, continuing on into the unfinished business. Yesterday in our workshop, we did have a few grant presentations for us. Mr. Dobry, if you'd come on down. The first one that we had was the Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. It's in front of us. This is Phase 2, and it's a reimbursement for $161,187.60 for the tasers, and this would be the second tranche of the tasers that we had approved previously, correct?
It is, yeah. Last year, around this time, you approved this same grant, and they were able to purchase the first half of the new tasers for the sheriff's office, and this would be for the second half. As we discussed yesterday with the ongoing grant situation, we would still like to apply for this and just continue to monitor and make sure that we get full reimbursement for the first grant before we before we were to move forward and take on those expenditures from the second grant.
Okay, question for Robert?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I move to approve this Montezuma County grant application submission form for the Montezuma County Sheriff's Office for the Taser Upgrade Part 2 in the amount of $161,187.60.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the Montezuma County grant application submission form for the Montezuma County Sheriff's Office for the Taser Upgrade Part 2 grant reimbursement in the amount of $161,187.60. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, next up, we also had a conversation of promoting safe and stable families grant, a request from Social Services. This is just amendment number 5, which is something that we've done every year. Stephen, you looked this over. There's no implications to anything else to us. It's just an ongoing amendment to this grant that we already have. Anything else you'd like to add?
Nope, that's correct. It's a contract amendment to an existing contract that's going to make more money available to the county.
Okay. I move to approve this contract modification, contract amendment number 5 with the Colorado Department of Early Childhood in an amount of $200,000 for fiscal year 2025.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the State of Colorado contract modification, contract amendment number 5 for the Department of Social Services. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Robert, you were standing there so patiently waiting. Next is the Duo Software and Support Contract Renewal. Would you like to take this on? Miss Diane? Or we'll go ahead and defer to Kim? Since you're here, I'll let you go ahead and describe it.
Okay. So basically, this is just a renewal of a service agreement for our Duo equipment. The Duo equipment is the one that scans our ballots, and then at the end of the election, we take that scanned documentation and insert it into everybody's voter registration record. It's a 5-year contract. We've already had it for 5 years. It starts at $10,000, and then there's a slight increase for each year. It is already included within my budget for this year. So, any questions? We
No.
love it. It saves us a lot of time after the election. It used to take us months to scan everybody's ballot into their record.
I think that's the biggest thing. It saves us a lot of time in the county by doing things with technology and efficiency instead of doing things the old-fashioned way of by hand. So,
Yes.
pretty straightforward.
Saves us months.
I move to sign in this service agreement with Runbeck related to the Montezuma County.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the Runbeck Election Services Service Agreement with Montezuma County. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. And last, Travis, I'll let you look at this one as far as the grant administration and funding policy.
Commissioners, as we discussed yesterday, this just incorporates some best practices and some additional oversight related to departments and elected officials seeking some grants. We try to limit financial exposure to the county, so what we're adding is some justification for these grants, and there are some carve-outs for core projects such as public health and social services.
Any questions for Travis?
No.
Okay.
I don't have any, we've been through it. Okay.
Yep.
I move to approve this grant administration and funding policy as presented for Montezuma County.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the Montezuma County Grant Administration and Funding Policy. Is there any further discussion on this one, gentlemen? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. It's going to be short and easy today.
You said that last week, too.
I said that last week.
Yeah.
New business. Travis, we have a transfer order number 2, 2025. Senior Transportation.
Commissioner, I can take that. Transfer order number 2, 2025 is the transfer of $41,023.40 from the general fund to the Senior Services and Transportation Fund. That is for grant funds that were accepted in 2024 to be expended in 2025. And since we made the change of moving Senior Services and Transportation into their own separate fund, rather than spend those funds in the general fund, we'd like to transfer them to be spent in that fund. And those three programs, it's a $10,000 grant from the Lohr Foundation for a salad bar, the remainder of a $25,000 grant, it's $24,738.95. That's also from the Lohr Foundation for a senior chores program, and then $6,284.45, that's from the Nutrition Services Incentive Program.
Okay, I would so move that we approve Order 2-2025 to transfer funds to, who we transfer it to? Senior Services.
Senior Services.
And the Transportation Fund.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept order number 2, 2025, a transfer of $41,023.40 from the general fund to Senior Services and Transportation Fund. Is there any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Next is transfer order number 3, the MoCo vehicle wraps, which, by the way, if you haven't seen them, they are very visual and stand out very well, and they look great. So check them out.
I would so move.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to give a quick background on it. This
Yeah,
was
go ahead.
this was originally the commissioners discussed it on November 19th of 2024 about approving the MoCo vehicle wraps and taking that as a capital expense from the Senior Citizens Bus Fund. Originally, it had been discussed to go to the general fund, but since we moved all those services into their own separate fund, this transfer is to transfer $15,000 from the Senior Citizens Bus Fund to the Senior Services and Transportation Fund for the reimbursement of those MoCo wraps. I did notice there is a typo on the order number. It's 3/2025. I will print a replacement copy for that.
Okay.
I would so move we approve Order 3/2025 to transfer $15,000 from Senior Citizens Bus Fund to the Senior Services and Transportation Fund for reimbursement of wraps for MoCo transportation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept transfer order number 3, 2025, transferring $15,000 from the Senior Citizens Bus Fund to the Senior Services and Transportation Fund for the reimbursement of the wraps for the MoCo transportation vehicles. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. There you go, sir. Mr. Tarnowski, do you have anything for us today?
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. One update, I know there's been some intermittent updates about trying to fill the other position in my office, our Assistant County Attorney position. We did have an interview last week, but I think at this point, we're not in a position to really make an offer to anybody we've interviewed in this interview cycle. So my proposal for the time being is to just continue to run the office with one attorney, kind of on an interim basis. Honestly, we're at somewhat of a lull, as I knock on wood, in terms of child protection work. We kind of wrapped up a lot of the big civil litigation issues that were kind of pending when I took over. A lot of that's pending before the courts. So it's not the case that I feel like a bunch of stuff's falling through the cracks. I think I'm keeping up with the work. I think it's probably not ideal in the sense that, you know, when things do start to ramp up, that's going to be difficult, candidly. But I think that's really kind of the best way to deal with this situation. I'm going to reach out to some of the people I know who do contract work for certain smaller counties who might be interested in the area, but my fear is that it's going to be quite expensive. But I'm going to go ahead and go through that step and kind of see how that meets our needs. I know in talking with Ms. Hargraves, our social services director, you know, we certainly both feel that having someone here in person is pretty important for the way that we do the social services work in particular. That there's a lot of kind of more informal stuff that happens that would be difficult to do the same way with someone, you know, who doesn't work here in the building or may even be, you know, calling in for hearings from different parts of the state, things like that. Like with the dollar store case, I think what that kind of opens us up to, though, is potentially me making a recommendation to contract out things of that nature, really labor and time intensive, more specialized substantive things that might come up, like some of the land use issues that we deal with. But I'm really hoping to fly this position probably as is, again, maybe in April when there might be some new bar, people who recently passed the bar on that cycle. That just happens twice a year. The way we have that position structured now is a little bit unusual, being a 30-hour position in the legal field, but I think there's pros and cons to that, and I certainly enjoyed my time in that position, so I don't think it's like a fatal thing, but it probably doesn't have the same appeal to everyone, and we just really haven't had the right fit in that role. So for the time being, that's kind of how I'm thinking about that issue. Do any of you have any questions about sort of how we're operating the office right now?
No.
None at all. None from me.
Then my other update is just, you know, I've been in contact with the attorneys both for the people who are owed money who are bringing the sheriff's sale action on the Ironwood property, and also CDPHE. As far as I know, it's still going to sale on Thursday. I'm going to have my legal assistant attend so that we kind of know what happened. I've been in contact with CDPHE. I'm trying to make sure we're doing everything we need to do to, you know, just cover our end of that whole process. And I think there's really a lot of unknowns all the way from is anyone going to buy this property to, you know, how's that all going to look afterwards. So I think we're really just mostly needing to wait and see how this plays out before we can really think too much about what to do with that, because the spectrum of possibilities is pretty big. And then I've got a child protection docket tomorrow in the afternoon, and then I've got coming up, I'm set for 2 different trials for the same dates towards the end of next week. So I think we'll probably do one of those at any rate. So that's something looming on my calendar, but overall, like I said, you know, between me and Naomi, we're keeping up with everything that's coming through.
Okay. Yeah, we had a conversation with Archuleta County Commissioner, Travis and I did last week, and that's what they do is they contract out because they don't have the ability to have multiple attorneys either, which I agree with you. I think we should have if we can find them. So For now, we'll do what we have to do and then move forward.
Yeah, and I know the guy who does that for Archuleta a little bit, Jeff Coy. I mean, I've heard good things about his work from some of the other attorneys that practice in our courts on those kinds of cases that also work with him in Archuleta. So he's one of the people I'll be reaching out to kind of get a sense of, what he would charge and if he's, able and willing to do the work with us too. So.
All right. Thank you, sir. Travis?
Gentlemen, last week, as Commissioner Candelaria was at CCI, I was at another conference. Some of the topics were probably similar, a lot of legislative updates. We attended a session at the Capitol. This year, budget's dominating the session. They're roughly $778 million in the hole. And I did get a quick opportunity to speak with Senator Caitlin, and we talked about unfunded mandates, and his concern is they're going to keep coming because the state has no money. In relationship to that, we are starting our budget process, and consistent with the directive of the commissioners, we have sent out packets early, and we will be providing all departments and elected officials their base budget so that they can start working on that.
All right, thank you. And just to correct you on that number at the state now, which I heard Friday, was now 1.2 billion. It's bigger. Yeah, it keeps going up.
We have nothing to report.
We have nothing, all right. Very good.
We're doing great.
All right, commissioners, Commissioner Lindsay.
Yes, City Council tonight. I did receive a letter from Sarah Pretzer, and to mirror what these folks have said, I forwarded it on to you, Kim, for inclusion in the public note or public minutes. Other than that, just a few phone calls, a few texts, and that's about the size of it.
Commissioner Copenhaver.
I don't have much to report this week. Didn't have any other meetings, specific meetings, and have a Mancus meeting tomorrow evening, and other than the coffee with the commissioners and stuff, which is surprisingly it's been well attended every week, and it's good conversation with people. It's good to see people show up. Let us hear your voice, what you're thinking, because we can't read your mind. Appreciate the people that show up. We really do.
And I would like to echo that. It is, like we said, it's off camera. It's very casual. None of us really bite, whether you believe that or not. We really do not. But it has been some great conversations, and it's well attended, and I do appreciate that. So for me last week, obviously Wednesday was a travel day. I spent the next 2 days in Denver in a huge snowstorm, which was great to get up around the Capitol area. We got out of there a couple hours late Friday, and the roads were dry, and shoot, we made it home by 10 o'clock, so it really wasn't that bad. Took positions on over 60 bills. And again, like I've told you all, it doesn't matter in that room at CCI. It's one vote per county. It doesn't matter how big or how small you are, but everything collectively together. It doesn't matter if you're a D, an R, or an I. If it's an unfunded mandate, nobody can afford anything else from the state that they cannot fund. So it's kind of neat to see that in that room because there are a lot of red-faced conversations that go on in that room. But everybody is agreeing with that. I did go to the Dolores meeting last night. Pretty benign. There was really nothing of interest to report for that. But I do want to take a minute now, and I want to address some of these that we heard in public comment today. So first off, there's not 4 of us going to Washington. Not sure where you got that number at, but the correct number is 2. Mine is mostly or heavily reimbursed because I sit as vice chair of the public lands through CCI. So we spend very little to go back to Washington. And again, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we do get back there, and we do talk to our representatives. Secondly, I've already scheduled with the scheduler of Congressman Hurd. We already have a specific meeting set up for Travis and myself, which I already have the laundry list of things that we will be discussing with him on March 4th as we spend our day up at Capitol Hill. So those are, your concerns are heard. We have concerns of ourselves. We still are looking at the NCA as it affects us in the Dolores River. And so there are a lot of conversations there. We're going to be talking about PILT, our payment in lieu of taxes, our SRS funding. None of those are ever guaranteed. So those are funding sources and mechanisms that we are looking at specifically also. We think that 48 cents an acre from the federal government is pretty dismal of what we receive, and then we have to try and run a county on that. So there are a lot of conversations that we are prepared and willing to have. In our meeting yesterday afternoon, we did talk to the BLM. We talked to Derek Padilla. And I specifically asked the question, you know, how has this affected you here in our local offices? He said they've only lost one person, which was a new person, which was a range employee. And then there was another one that was a real estate personnel, which was doing some of their other stuff. And I think, I'll try and quote this right, but he said it was fairly insignificant at this point in time for the BLM here in these offices. So we are talking to our federal partners to see how it is going to impact us here in this county. And we will continue those conversations because there are a lot of grants that Montezuma County also runs on that we receive. So we are at the table. We do not want to be on the menu, and we will continue to talk to our federal and state partners. I had a Zoom call yesterday at 11. I had to step out of the coffee with the commissioners. It was with a La Plata County and Archuleta County commissioner also on there. And to our knowledge right now, none of the firefighters' positions have been cut. Now, I'm not saying they will or they won't be, but as of present date, yesterday, those have not been cut in our local region. So just to kind of, you know, try to calm everybody. I mean, to a certain extent, I realize that it makes people feel tension and apprehension, but we really are working for everybody out there, and I want you to know that. And I think that is all that I have right now, other than Travis and myself will be out of here Thursday, and we'll be gone for a week, and we'll be back next week. So there will not be a county commissioners meeting next week.
On a little bit of a side note, the measles have reappeared in Texas and now New Mexico, and it might be headed this way. So just use your hand sanitizer, wash your face and hands, and watch out. Also, there's a lot of telemarketers, scam calls, and phishing emails that all of a sudden have cropped up again. So be safe out there. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn this February 25th, 2025 meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.